Most companies think they've figured out AI adoption. They've done the pilots, they've run the proof of concepts, they've signed the vendor contracts, and somewhere in a boardroom, someone declared it a success and moved on to the next priority. But there's a phase that happens after that moment, after the champagne and the slide deck, that nobody prepared for. And it's the phase that quietly breaks things. I've seen it happen across insurance companies, accounting firms, medical clinics, businesses that did everything right in the beginning, and then, 6 to 12 months later, found themselves dealing with problems that weren't in any deployment plan. What's happening inside those companies right now is something most AI coverage completely misses. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why and what to do about it. By the way, what you're looking at is an AI clone. At Data Wonder, my company, we build AI automation and voice agent systems for real businesses. AI is already part of how we operate every day, so it made sense to use it here too. If you value AI analysis that comes from actually building and deploying these systems, not from reading about them, consider subscribing. No hype here, just what we actually observe. Now, back to the hidden phase. Let's start with the assumption that almost every company makes. The assumption is this: if the technology works, the adoption is complete. The pilot was successful. The model produced accurate outputs. The integration held up. Users got trained. IT signed off. Done. That logic feels airtight, but it's wrong in a very specific way. Here's what actually happens. When a new AI system gets deployed inside a company, there's an initial period of high engagement. People are curious. Managers are watching. The early metrics look good. Efficiency goes up. Errors go down. There's a moment where it genuinely looks like the problem has been solved. And that moment is exactly when the hidden phase begins. Because what happens next is subtle. It doesn't show up in dashboards. It doesn't generate incident reports. It builds slowly, beneath the surface of normal operations. The employees who use the system every day start to adapt around it, not with it. And it matters enormously. Adapting with a system means you use it as intended, you push its capabilities, you flag problems when they arise. Adapting around it means you find workarounds. You avoid the parts that feel awkward. You do the minimum required to say you used it, and then you handle the real work the old way. Have you seen this in your own company? Because it's more common than most leaders realize. And here's the part that's easy to miss. This doesn't happen because people are lazy or resistant. It happens because there's a gap, a very specific gap between what the system was designed to do and what people actually need to do their jobs. That gap is almost never addressed during deployment. Because during deployment, the focus is on the technology, not on the human workflow that surrounds it. This is what I mean by the hidden phase. It's the period where the system is technically live, the metrics look acceptable, and underneath all of it, the actual adoption is quietly hollowing out. But that's not even the real problem. I'll get to that in a moment. First, the business consequences. When this happens, companies pay twice. They pay for the AI system, licensing, integration, maintenance. Those costs are real and ongoing, and they also continue to pay for the parallel human processes that never actually went away because the workarounds became invisible infrastructure. In accounting firms, I've seen this play out with document automation. The system handles the intake, the flagging, the categorization, but when something looks slightly off, staff don't escalate through the system. They pull the document, handle it manually, and file the result without tracing it back. The system shows high throughput. The actual process is fractured. In insurance, I've seen it with claims processing. Automated triaging is in place. But adjusters who've been doing this work for 15 years have a mental model that doesn't match the system's logic, so they override, quietly, repeatedly. Not because the system is wrong, because the training never closed the gap between how the system thinks and how they think. That's the double cost. Visible AI spend, invisible human workaround cost, and the gap between them grows over time. If you found this analysis useful so far, a like takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps this channel reach more people doing serious business work. Now, here's where it gets more interesting. Most companies, when they eventually notice something is off, diagnose it as a training problem. People didn't get enough onboarding. We need more workshops, better documentation. So they run more training, and sometimes it helps at the margins. But the core problem doesn't go away, because the core problem isn't that people don't know how to use the system. The core problem is that nobody owns what happens next. This is the part nobody talks about, and it's the thing I want you to really sit with. When an AI system gets deployed, there's always a project team, there's a vendor, there's an IT department, there's usually a sponsor, someone senior who championed the initiative. And then the project closes, the team disperses, the vendor is on a maintenance contract, and the system just runs. But AI systems aren't static. The business around them changes, processes evolve, edge cases accumulate. The gap between what the system was built to handle and what it's actually being asked to handle widens, and nobody is formally responsible for that gap. Does this sound familiar? The vendor is responsible for uptime, not outcomes. IT is responsible for infrastructure, not usage. The original project sponsor has moved on to the next initiative, and the people using the system every day don't have a formal channel to report the friction they're experiencing. So the friction accumulates silently. The workarounds multiply. The double cost grows, and the company looks at its AI dashboard and sees green. This is the hidden phase. Not a single moment, not a crisis, a slow compounding drift away from what was supposed to happen, invisible to the people who have authority to fix it. Now here's the second-order effect that almost nobody anticipates. When a company eventually recognizes this pattern, and some do, usually 18 to 30 months after deployment, their instinct is to invest more. More tooling, a new integration, an upgraded model, a second round of training. But the actual problem isn't the technology. The actual problem is that the organization never built the operational muscle to evolve alongside the system. And that muscle isn't built by adding more technology. It's built by creating clear ownership, by establishing a feedback loop between the people using the system daily and the people with authority to adjust it, by treating AI deployment not as a project with a finish line, but as an ongoing operational responsibility. The companies that get this right don't necessarily have better AI. They have better operational discipline around their AI. That's the real gap. And it's entirely fixable, but only if you name it correctly. What I've seen work practically, assigning an internal AI operations role, not a title, a responsibility. Someone whose job is to monitor not just whether the system is running, but whether it's actually being used as intended, whether the gaps are growing, and whether the workarounds need to be addressed at the system level. This doesn't require a large team. In most of the companies we work with, it starts with one person and a clear mandate. The impact is disproportionate to the effort because the drift gets caught early, before it becomes structural. The businesses that invest in this kind of operational ownership after deployment are the ones that actually realize the value they projected in the business case. The ones that don't are the ones that quietly conclude, a few years later, that AI didn't really deliver. It delivered. Nobody was watching. So if you're thinking about AI deployment right now, or you're in the middle of one, the question worth asking isn't just, is the system working? The question is, who owns what happens after it goes live? That's the question that determines whether the investment actually pays off. I'd genuinely like to know, in your company, does that ownership exist? Is there someone who is formally responsible for what happens after the AI goes live? Leave your answer in the comments. It tells you something important about where your organization actually is. If what I described today reflects what's happening inside your company, the drift, the workarounds, the double cost, the ownership gap, and you want to work through it properly, you can book a free call with me. The link is right below this video.